All right, Steve, welcome and take over.
All right. Well, thank you. Welcome everyone. This is today we're going to talk about Greek wines, and I'm excited because unfortunately, um, Greek wine have Greek wines have not been abundantly available in our market, and I don't understand really why. I think they're hugely compelling. During COVID, both both Greece and Portugal, as an example, derive so much of their economy off of tourism that they tried to stay open as long as possible and to be closed for as little as possible. And so, as a result, a lot of people visited Greece and they came back and they were all excited about the wines of Greece. And unfortunately, I had to tell them that we didn't have an abundant amount of those wines. So I was very excited when one of my distributors brought on a new portfolio called Atene. It is it exclusively, well, actually it's Greek, and they have a few Cypriot wines, which actually I brought in. I have the first wine from Cyprus on my shelf now. But I was really excited because I think the wines are certainly compelling for many reasons. One, they have a story to tell. I mean, wine has been made in this area since, I mean, we've found evidence of winemaking going as far back as 1600 BC. We have a place that has over 200 indigenous varieties just unique to them. You have a place that is very challenging, I guess, for wine grapes. And so if you have all of those things together, they've been making wine for a long time. It's a challenging environment. What you end up with are grapes and wine styles that have been essentially test marketed since, for thousands of years. So I think that for many reasons, these are compelling wines. The grapes that they are doing best are ones that we're not familiar with. I mean, they don't travel outside of the Greek Isles. They're really limited to that area, and in part it's because they're hard to understand. You see a grape varietal. I mean, to be honest, I had to spend a fair amount of time just kind of looking up information on the red grape that we're having, because while I'm familiar that Greece makes a lot of it, I don't know it. I don't experience it on a regular basis, so it's not one that I have a deep knowledge of. Um, but it I mean, the varietals are really, really cool, and they have a lot of things that we like in wine. They have unique characteristics. They have beautiful textures, and probably one of the things that's going to carry Greek wine into the immediate future is the fact that the grapes that they use, because they've adapted to these challenging environments, they're probably going to be better suited to um, a world that unfortunately we are experiencing climate change, and the wine industry is very aware of that. Certain grapes potentially will see their the end of their lifetime of quality in certain areas. I mean, it just needs to tick up a little bit in temperature for a great wine to become just sort of an average wine. Or if the growing season is shortened, or if if the grape is not naturally geared toward dealing with drought. And the cool thing about the grapes that Greece is using is these are all grapes that have stood the test of time, that have learned to adapt, and so they're less sensitive to drought. They're less sensitive to heat. They have the ability that, oftentimes one of the challenges for grape growers is when in the life cycle of the grape, in the ripening phase of the grape, it goes too quickly and it converts too much acid. I mean, as a fruit ripens, the acids convert to sugars, and you get ripening. And unfortunately, with extreme heat, often that ripening process is accelerated to the point where the acid is obliterated, and you just are left with very sweet grapes. So so that we don't have to constantly doctor. I mean, I'm a firm believer that wine should be a natural expression. It should not be a chemistry experiment made by chemical engineers. And there's a lot of wine that is made that way. But these are wines and grapes that I think, going into the future of where drought and excessive heat are going to be an issue, I think these wines are going to be the ones that we go back to, because they've adapted for that and they are well suited. So I think I had a lot to cover. I mean, this is a doctoral thesis. I mean, Greek wine, the Greeks integrated wine into their entire society. I mean, it was both connected to simply the enjoyment of wine, as well as to art and to religion. So it was integrated in many, many ways. When the Greeks essentially inspired the concept of wine trade. I mean, they once they figured out that there were certain vessels that could transport the wine, like, for example, the amphora, and move it from one place to another, now you had something that you could travel with. And so the Greeks, I mean, they spread the vine. They brought it to many, many places. The people who conquered the Greeks later, and they picked up those habits and took them places. So the Greeks were really responsible in spreading a lot of this. And so it really is, it's just, like I said, it's a study of wine. It's a study of culture, of history, of anthropology. I mean, it's just, there's so many things that layer into this topic. So the first wine, let's get to tasting some wine. The first wine that we're going to taste today is from the Peloponnese Peninsula. So you're thinking the southern end of Greece. It's a peninsula that has varied elevation. Certain parts of it, I mean, it kind of moves up and then plateaus. So you have both a plateau at about 22 to 2,500 feet elevation, which is well above, I mean, is definitely considered a cool climate region. And and then you have the foothills. And so the first wine that we have today is actually sort of a cross. I mean, it's a mix of both of those things. The main grape and the wine is from Semele winery in the region of Peloponnese. The wine is Mountain Sun. It's a 70% Moscofilero and 30% Sauvignon Blanc blend. So the Moscofilero, indigenous grape, beautifully aromatic. It has sort of rose water and orange blossom and tropical fruits and a lot of that. Just a very expressive, just on the nose, very expressive grape. And then they blend in the Sauvignon Blanc, I believe, for really two reasons. One, it provides a nice little pop of acid. Sauvignon Blanc, also a cool climate grape, has a lot of acidity, and so that's sort of provides a little pop for this beautifully aromatic, floral, tropical fruit kind of wine. So it provides a little structure. The other thing it does is when you look at the wine label, if you're purchasing this in a wine shop, the other thing that you notice is, hey, I know that guy. It's the Sauvignon Blanc. You at least recognize that. You may not recognize Moscofilero, but you do recognize Sauvignon Blanc. So there are other countries that typically ones that have a fair amount of indigenous grapes in their arsenal, grapes that are native to their region. And rather than going through the explanation of, well, Moscofilero is a white grape and it's grown in kind of at the top of the plateaus of high elevation in southern Greece, it's hard to explain that very, very cohesively. So it's easier just to include a familiar face. So but in this case, I really like what it does. So let's taste Mountain Sun and see what we think. Um, I mean, first, beautiful color, really, really bright, white gold, very polished, star bright. You can almost see the reflection of lights and things in the wine. So really a beautiful color. On the nose, very, very aromatic. And it is one of those so-called aromatic grapes like Riesling and Gewürztraminer and Muscat. It throws out a lot right on the get-go. And in this case, I mean, like, again, I get kind of a floral, orange blossom, rose water, not super strong on the rose, but citrus flower and rose on the nose. Really a nice pop of acid. You kind of get some melon flavors. There's some citrus. There's some underripe stone fruit. And then that acid from the Sauvignon Blanc just kind of tickles the tongue, provides a little pop. And things that, I mean, this is a wine that if you were in Greece, you might have things from the water, and as a companion to food, these aromatics pair really well with things from the ocean, with flavors like garlic and fresh herbs. So it's a very versatile wine. But most importantly, I mean, on a blazing hot day, if you're in Greece over the summertime on a blazing hot day, this would be a perfect wine. So I think this has a lot going for it, and very food friendly, and some interesting character. Any questions or thoughts on this particular one?
We don't have a big group, so if you guys want to just pop off your mutes and just ask a question, please go ahead. Go ahead, Cliff.
Yeah, I looked at the label on the wine, and it said something about the rose fragrance for the wine. So I was curious about just how the rose would go over in a wine. This is the first one that I've had that had this kind of rose aromas and taste to it, and I think it works really well. So I was really pleased by the result of the rose there, and I take
Yeah.
it that that's not the Sauvignon Blanc. That's the other grape that's
That
out.
is. Yeah, that rose. And when rose shows up, usually, so it's kind of funny. Roses and strawberries on the sensory spectrum, they're actually related, but on the sensory spectrum, they're actually pretty close. And it's kind of like in chemistry, it doesn't take much to turn, lead into gold, just with a little subtle change in the chemistry. And that's really kind of what happens here. So when you get that rose petal, I usually say I mean, rose, I grow roses in my yard. They vary widely. Some are fruity, some are kind of heady. And the rose note shows up in a lot of the aromatic grapes. I mean, it it shows up in a lot of the, Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Muscat, the floral notes that you get oftentimes has a little bit of rose water tucked in there. And I say rose water just because it's a sort of a lighter, more dilute note. But I mean, I like there are times where a wine can get almost perfumey, and they are, or even, I mean, the kind of the worst skew we would refer to it as soapy. So it's sort of a perfumey, soapy, thick, heavy, cloying kind of aroma. And this is just, it's like kind of breezy. That rose note just kind of blows in and blows out. But it is, I mean, I guess what I love about these wines are that, you can kind of envision yourself sitting, on a terrace having dinner overlooking the ocean, and, maybe there's some flowers in the background that are blooming, or some, I mean, they're not, creating the sense. It's just kind of the scent of the place. And, I love the fact that this wine sort of conjures a sense of place. I mean, you can kind of picture yourself, kicking back as the sun on the label drops into the ocean, and you see the green flash. It's
Kim had a question. The label has protected geographical indication on it, I guess, for Peloponnese.
yeah,
What does,
yeah,
I think she's asking what that implies or what it means.
yeah. No, great question. So, generally speaking, in the old world, and Greece most certainly is part of that, wine has been around for so long that, I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, So the first wine merchant, he goes out and he sells his stuff, and people love it. And then the next thing you see, you go into the store down the street, and they have this wine that it looks like the guy's label, but it's different. And it's, he's charging the same price, but it's not the same. And so it probably didn't take fraud that long to infiltrate the wine trade. And so to protect the regions, to protect the consumers, to protect the producers, a lot of the old regions have actually set up very, very specific rules about how wine is labeled and what can be included in it, and the amount of grapes that can be produced. The type, I mean, there are even rules relating to the grapes used, the types of trellising, all sorts of things. But basically, the goal is to ensure that the quality of that wine is what is reflected, that reflects well on the region. So the protected geographical indication, and actually I think it's usually PDO, protected geographical origin, but essentially it's a designation that says if you are within this category, and this category, I want to say somewhere in the late 60s, early 70s is when the current DOs started, kind of locking in. I mean, it historically there have been DOs, designated origins, in wine growing regions for many times. And the Romans actually had certain, I mean, their version of essentially a DO. But this one is fairly new. I mean, within the last 50 some years. But it basically says if they're selling this wine as from the Peloponnese growing region, the quality has been met, the standards have been followed, and you are getting a level of guarantee that this isn't just a wine that shows up in the shop. It is something that has been essentially vetted. So I think I mean, it's a weird thing for Americans to kind of embrace the idea that, that somebody would actually say, hey, you know what, you can sell your produce, here, but you have to grow this type of produce and you have to pick it at this time and it has to be of this quality. And we might even have a tasting panel that tastes it before you can sell it. I mean, those are all things that are part of protected regions of origin. And but that I think I kind of like them. I mean, we have similar things in the United States. We have the it's called the AVA system, the American Viticultural Area system. And so, you know, if you're producing a wine, say in Napa Valley, and that, you know, I think it's 75% of the varietal. So if you're selling, let's say you're selling a Cabernet in Napa Valley, 75% of that Cabernet must be Cabernet. They're actually allowed 25% to add other things. But if you're labeling it as Cab, it needs to be at least 75% single varietal Cabernet. 85% of that wine has to be from that region. So Napa Valley actually can source up to 15% from another, you know, a neighboring region. Usually the things like that are, it's a property that actually technically sits maybe in Sonoma. So it's just maybe, you know, a stone's throw away from where Napa is, but because they're allowed to use that. And then 95% of the wine has to be from that particular vintage. And those are rules that apply to all wines that are marketed as Napa Valley wines. So we have our own system, but this is the Greek system has been around for a long time, and is really, again, designated to ensure quality.
I will tell you, as always, I'm eating with my drinking. And I made some light stuff to have with the white. I made like I cheated on a spanakopita and took all the ingredients and stuffed them in a little one of those little phyllo cups. And it's great. And I had that in a Greek salad. And there, it's very good with that. But I'm also made some Greek lamb meatballs. And this white wine is equally good with that, with the lamb, as it is with the vegetable and lighter foods. It surprised me a little bit with that, but it's really great with it. It's like a great dinner wine.
Yeah. Well, and that is, I mean, I always, you know, leverage, I tell people they should leverage that, you know, if you know that a region likes to eat and Greek food is not horrible. You know, if you know that they like to eat, probably they've already figured out the issues with all the various foods. And yeah, I mean, tucked in the back of this wine, I mean, so there's definitely some aromatics, but tucked back, I also get kind of some sweet herbs. You know, there's like a little bit of a basil note, maybe a little bit of a dried thyme note. There's an herbiness that you know, just the way lamb loves herbs, you know, rosemary and mint and things like that. This wine has those compatibilities. And so even though it's not a big red, chewy, you know, tannic wine that you might think would pair really, really well with red meat, the aromatics on this one, I mean, it also has a lot of minerality. So, you know, that almost like a sea salt kind of profile. I mean, it just causes other, it doesn't override flavors. It accentuates them.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I can see this. I can see this doing very well with lamb. I actually had, my son is home visiting, and he actually purchased some dolmas. So I've got some stuffed grape leaves that are not horrible with this wine. So yeah, no, very, very tasty. I mean, like I said, I hope we see more Greek wine, because I mean, it's honestly a wine of this quality. If it had more grapes that people were familiar with, it would be well above $20. I mean, it just would have to be. The complexity that you're getting is more than, I mean, I have wines that I sell and that are delicious wines, but I mean, you know, double the price of this wine, and still don't have kind of the elegance and the complexity that this has. So, capitalize, leverage the fact that Muscofilero is a hard to pronounce name that is largely unfamiliar to most people. And if you can't sell it for more, then you win. And as wine people, we like those wins. Those are good wins. All right, well, let's move on to the red. So the red is from a region that also fairly high elevation. It is one that has a really, really interesting. I mean, it's again well suited to its environment. It doesn't mind. It doesn't mind drought. It doesn't mind excessive heat. So it a lot of times, I mean, there's certain grapes that when they get the weather that particularly this grape gets, you're gonna get pruniness. You're gonna get a cooked quality. I mean, it really is just that fruit just being blasted with heat. And I don't get this with this wine. I mean, it has some really nice dark fruits, to it. I mean, it has that beautiful. I mean, first of all, beautiful like dark ruby color, real nice polish. Looks beautiful in the glass. On the nose, I mean, you can smell. I get some purple flowers. I get cherries, plums, some herbal quality to it. This does go into barrel. So you should get some oak notes in it, but it's and I'm gonna pronounce it because I actually had to write this down because it's quite a bit. Ior Ioritico. Ioritico. It's a mouthful. It is as I've learned, it is likely named after the chapel of St. George in Nemea, and because this grape has been grown there forever. But it is yeah, quite the mouthful. But this is one of Greece's kind of signature reds. Even though they have 200, they have certain grapes that do better than others, and this particular varietal is one. But yeah, I mean, on the nose, it just smells, I mean, really elegant and I mean, polished. I mean, it has sort of a wine perfume. I mean, in the mouth, good tannic structure, great acidity. Again, that it has that natural ability to retain acidity, even in the scorching heat. But I mean, just really nice fruit. Black plum, black cherry, popping acid. I mean, there's for a wine that I mean, it has some good tannic structure. You can kind of detect that dryness, that astringency in the mouth, but there's a fair amount of juiciness to it. And if you're having that, I mean, this would be beautiful with those lamb meatballs. I mean, this is one where it's got a little more extra oomph. And so if the meal that you're having has a little more fat, which lamb typically does, that acidity and that dryness, those natural tannins, are gonna help temper that and kind of refresh the palate and create some interesting flavors in the mouth with I mean, in collaboration with the lamb. But yeah, this is a great red meat, great cheese wine. Fuller, like, again, things that would typically have a little more fat to them. But yeah, I mean, this is just one of the grapes, red grapes that they do very well with. So, it's Greek wine is definitely got something worth our attention. I really do feel. Any thoughts on the red?
Anyone, please feel free to unmute. I find it, the tannins and the acid are like really killer. I mean, my mouth is like watering from the first sip. It's really like a really bold red.
Yeah, no, it has that oomph, but yet it's not boozy. Yeah, 14% alcohol. I mean, that's almost old school. I mean, historically the wines of Spain and Portugal and France and Italy were, 12.5 to 13.5% alcohol. So 14 is really well within that range. I mean, a lot of wines these days are 15.5 to up to over 16, and they really do get a little sloppy at that point. And so the fact that this wine has the ability to stand up to a fattier meal, a richer meal, and also, but yet, you could have this in the summertime, and it doesn't feel like you're drinking port.
Yeah.
Um, no, I really like this.
This seems to have the Marple seal of approval. They just posted both wines are outstanding in my opinion. So
Yeah, like I said, when I was thinking about picking the wines for this tasting, there are times where these events just kind of motivate the tasting, and I tasted through maybe a dozen wines from this importer, and they were all just outstanding. I mean, there were some I liked better than others. There was actually a Muscofilero without the Sauvignon Blanc, and I rather liked the acid from the Sauvignon Blanc. So, but I mean, I've had many wines from I mean the many wines from Greece that I wish I could get more of or sell more of, and I'm thrilled that this importer is now working is now working through the Kansas market.
yeah.
So yeah,
As I slug my way through this, I'm noticing I think the difference between this and other reds I'm used to is it's more herbal. I mean, I
Mhm.
get all the fruits and I get all that kind of stuff, but like the white, I'm getting, all the herbs which go so well because they're in all the Greek foods,
Right.
oregano and thyme, and
Mhm.
their cooking is so herbal, and the wine seems to be that way too.
Well, and I mean, it goes back to the things that grow together go together, and um, these are food pairings that people figured out, hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And so probably we can accept them as good guidance. And I mean, it is um the that we Americans, we don't eat with our wine as much as I think we should, because I mean, really, there's almost no food, and I literally mean almost no food that doesn't have some sort of wine friend. And what the wine does for the food is really, I mean, that's why we cook with wine. Wine has a complexity, it has a chemistry that changes how we perceive and experience the food we're cooking. So yeah, no, I think I mean, I love the complexity of these wines, just because they are designed for, I mean, Greek food is pretty complex. There's a lot going on with Greek food. And these play to that.
Kim did ask a question on the red. How long will it age? When she got her wine, she got a younger wine, I assume, from her question,
Mhm.
and in the 2018. And how long will this age? Can you keep this around for a bit?
Well, it has a lot of things that, well, I guess let me back up one step. Um, For what I've observed over time is that the wines of the ancients, I mean, the wines that were really, I mean, that have that lengthy history that tie back to earlier cultures, you know, they didn't have climatized wine cellars. They did not have the ability to preserve things the way we do today. And so the wines they picked back then needed to have a lot of these things naturally to, I mean, to make them interesting. I mean, nobody wants, I mean, this neither of these wines would taste particularly great if by nature they oxidized very quickly and fell apart and you kind of nuts and nail polish and whatnot. But so in theory, I find, or as a general rule, I find that wines from kind of the ancient world typically do age better, because that's why they liked them. They didn't have all of the advantages that we had, and these wines just naturally had a chemistry to hold on. So with respect to this specific red, I mean, I would say, I mean, 5 to 10 years, because it has both a good amount of tannin, and it has a good amount of acidity. The alcohol is in check and is in a range that typically ages very well. And so with all of those things, I mean, again, the fact that it's a grape that the ancients fell in love with because it drank well over a long period of time, and because it has the chemistry that we can taste. I mean, again, tannin and acid. I mean, 5 to 10 years. So these wines are really, meant for the duration. They do very well. I know there are other Greek varietals. There's a Greek varietal called Xenomavro, and I mean, I've had Xenomavro from, I think the last time I had an older bottle, it was maybe 1999, 2000, early. I mean, so 20 plus years. And once that kind of that funk blew off, I mean, and typically, aged wines, if they've been, it's kind of trapped on an airplane for 20 some years, you get off the plane. It takes a little while to stretch the legs, but once they do, I mean, beautiful fruit, beautiful floral, spice, and all of the things that you love. So, yeah, I mean, these wines really, I mean, I have to assume that the ancients fell in love with them because of their durability. Because if they fell apart quickly, they wouldn't have lasted this long. We wouldn't have wanted to drink, prune juice from Grecian times. But anyway, so yeah, no, I love, like I said, I love wines like this. I generally find that they far outlive many of the more common varietals that we have, simply because those varietals are made for more of a, we're created in an environment where we want, immediate gratification, and these evolved in a different place.
Yeah. Steve and I were talking the other day about this, and I'm really thankful because Europe and America are so focused on France and Italy that as they export a little more of wines from Portugal and Spain and Greece and Hungary and some of these other things, they're sneaking in here at a much lower price because they can't command, the wines are as good, if not better, but they don't command the respect of the average consumer. And so we're getting great wines at a really reasonable price from some of these countries, I think.
Well,
Um,
no, absolutely. I mean, the unfortunate thing is, a very poorly made Cabernet Sauvignon will sell easily. Um, a very poorly made Chardonnay will sell. Merlot will sell. Why? Because they're part of the, most wine drinkers are familiar with maybe 10, a dozen different varietals, and they're literally hundreds that are used And I mean the total family population is around 2,000. So, but there are literally hundreds that are used around the world in fairly high volume that they're still not familiar with. But yeah, I absolutely agree. You want to pay as little as possible for the experience as you have to, and the quality that I think we're going to see. I think we are going to see more wines that are maybe less obvious. And as I said earlier, you know, climate change is one of those reasons. I mean, if you can't, if you, I mean, I predict, I hope I'm wrong, but I predict that within the next 20 to 30 years, Cabernet Sauvignon will not be the number one varietal in Napa Valley. And that's a crazy thing to think about, because that literally is the one grape that they are known for. But the climate is changing, and good Cabernet um has a little more of a specific requirement, and average Cabernet is prevalent, but really benchmark Cabernet is special. And the region, even though Napa Valley has crazy cool soil, I mean, they have amazingly complex soil. The heat in you know in the valley has ticked up, and that's going to change the quality. So I think we're going to see more grapes from places like Greece and Portugal and Spain, and you know, even places like Turkey and Hungary and Austria. I mean, grapes that we've not had a huge amount of experience with, but now they are these traditional grapes are well suited to an extreme environment, and we need that suitability for extreme environments.
Yeah,
Um,
even I was at a wine tasting, and the eastern areas of California, closer to Nevada, which are a little higher up, are
Mhm.
starting to really be interesting because they can maintain the types of grapes that the valley may or may not be able to grow.
Right. No, I mean it is there is going to be a shift. There are going to be areas that are no longer premium wine growing regions, that are premium wine growing regions today. Those are going to change. Simply because what made that a magic sweet spot. I mean, Napa Valley really is. It's a very, sorry about that. There's a something going on. Um, there um Napa Valley really is a sweet spot. And so, you know, I've been watching large companies, wine buying, I mean, companies that buy a lot of property, and the transactions that are occurring north of Napa and Sonoma in counties like Lake and Mendocino, um, they're happening more and more. And the Southern Oregon has long been an area that was like, yeah, you know, it's interesting, but there's just not that many people there, and I don't know. I mean, it's easier to sell a Willamette Valley wine that it, you know, but Southern Oregon, because of where it's located, it's going to be a place worth attention. And the grapes that they're growing there are really grapes that developed a reputation further south. They're not, you know, unique or interesting. They just have moved up in latitude. Um, and so yeah, I think, I mean, I would imagine we will see more grapes from the old world that again have a proven track record.
And maybe on
And
the other side, we'll be able to eventually go to the spas and Napas for a reasonable price.
that would be, you know, that's actually, I am sad for Napa, in the sense that I don't know where it's going. I mean,
Yeah.
it is, um it's almost eaten itself. It is become a place that is not what certainly, I mean, it's definitely a place of high dollar, and it's always been expensive, but it has never been as expensive as it's been in the last, say, 10 years.
Yeah.
The the price escalation in Napa is pretty crazy. But so I think as if you're not driving a Lamborghini, and you're not paying $2,000 a night for a hotel room, and you like wine, there are other places that I think probably will capture some love because they deserve it, and I think Greece is definitely one of those places.
One of the things, does anybody have any more questions? Because I was going to kind of semi-change the subject. One of the things I was going to ask, because we have a bit of time, is are there varietals or countries that any of you would like to? I mean, Steve can't always get the wines from every country in the world, but are there places or wines you'd like to try or get more information on? You know, if you can't think of anything, please email me and I'll pass it on because always open. Hungary is one of them. I will tell you, Cliff, I had a great experience. I went to Imbibe, which is the fundraiser for that Cork and Barrel has for their housing for Family Promise. And I tried a Hungarian wine, a very expensive Hungarian wine in a VIP room that was a bit of a dessert wine, and it was a bunch of different wines like this I couldn't pronounce, and it was unbelievable. And they can't. I've ordered it, and they can't get it. It's like a little crazy. But we have Hungary, Austria, Canada listed. So things for you to think about, Steve.
I love Hungary. There are there's a grape there. It would probably be more of a white tasting. We don't get a ton of red Hungarian wines, but definitely, I mean, there's a white grape called Harzlevelu that is really, yeah, again, it's another grape. It's like, what? It is another grape that is, has evolved in a place where wine has been a thing for a long time. Probably the wine, Jack, that you had was Tokai, or Tokajai.
I believe that's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, so that is one of their dessert wines, and they can get actually crazy expensive.
Yeah, this was ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, what you buy, I mean, the wines age for decades. And you buy the wine, the Tokai, based on the sugar level. So you'll see on the side of a bottle, it'll say petuños, and that basically means the quantity of really ripe grapes. So 3 petuños, 5 petuños, those are styles, but they're unctuous. They pour out like syrup. They age forever. The complexity of the flavor is spectacular. And so one of the grapes that is used in a lot of these wines is that Harzlevelu. So you can Austria, I mean, Hungary would definitely be a possibility. Austria, I wish we could get. I mean, for the most part, I'll have to look in to see if I can get any Austrian reds. I can definitely get some Austrian whites. In fact, I've got a new Gruner Veltliner in the store. Comes in a liter bottle. Just an absolutely, I mean, we refer to it as a porch pounder because it comes in a liter bottle. You chill it down for, it's like 14-15 bucks, and it just goes down so quickly. No, Austrian wines are spectacular. And I think we are also going to see more of those because the because of climate change again. The areas that are known for their high acid whites, their bright crisp whites, you know, if it ticks up a couple degrees, they may not be crisp anymore. They may, you know, it's kind of think of like an apple. You know, a green apple is crisp. A red apple is still pretty crisp, but a little more ripe, and a yellow apple is crisp, but definitely on, you know, I mean, yellow apple doesn't take long to go mealy, and that's kind of the way with these whites. So Austria, I think we're going to see a lot more Austrian wines in the market because they do have that bright pop of acid that can prevail. So let me look at that. Canada, I wish we could get more Canadian wines there. If you're traveling, the oh God, what is that valley? Oh, sorry, just flew out of my mind. Okanagan Valley. If you can, if you're traveling, I mean, you can find some pretty nice everyday wines, you know, 15, $20 from the Okanagan Valley. Unfortunately, we used to get one Sauvignon Blanc that I thought was delicious. It disappeared, and we cannot get that anymore. The only wines I can get right now from Canada are from the Niagara Peninsula, and those are late harvest dessert wines. Again, not inexpensive, $60 to $80 for a half bottle. But yeah, I wish we could get some more Canadian ones. So let me look at Hungary and Austria, because those are two areas I think we could touch on.
Right. The other thing I would just throw out, and I don't know if this is reasonable or anyone would be interested, but fortified wines like a sherry tasting or something
Oh
like that.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
I had a dinner that was the raffle dinner from the library, and I decided for the soup course to not pair a regular wine. I paired a sherry,
Hmm.
a dry sherry, and it was really a great pairing. And it's kind of a nice thing. I mean, sherry's a nice thing to drink, but it really goes well with a lot of specific, foods. I had a warm pear soup for that
Hmm.
course, and it was great. So I don't know. That's another thought. Maybe fortified wines or sherries or ports or something.
Yeah, no, sherry, I love sherry. I mean, it is, you know, it has quite the spectrum, and it really, I mean, I would say if there are things that sherry likes, I mean, anything nutty, anything from the ocean. I mean, like the classic pairing of crab or lobster bisque, you know, kind of in the old traditional formal service. You know, the last thing they would do would be to drop a little shot of a Fino sherry into your soup,
Yep.
into your bisque, and the flavor that it brings to it. I mean, it just bam. I mean, it's electric.
I mean, it's
Um,
part of turtle soup.
yes, no, I mean, really, sherry's, and then you know you go to the other end, and there's a very famous Spanish dessert. It's referred to as Basque cheesecake, but it's a cheesecake that looks like somebody went at it with a blowtorch. Um, and it's crustless, but it looks like you got the burned piece every time you have it. But the caramelization of those milk sugars, with a sweet style sherry like a Pedro Jimenez, which is a PX, very rich sherry. You just, I mean, it's just unctuous. I saw somebody mention flan. Absolutely. I mean, same thing. You've got caramelized sugars, caramelized milk sugars, and those just marry so well with the flavors. You know, we're talking like the flavors of the PX is, you know, kind of rich, kind of raisin, caramel, butterscotchy, dried fruit, but it just causes, I mean, all sorts of things. I mean, it's a flavor bomb. And one.
And if anybody has any more ideas, pass it on. I'll pass it to Steve or mention it to Steve when you're out there
Yeah.
chatting with him. And because there is no such thing as a short visit to buy a bottle of wine from Steve, as it should be.
Yeah. Well, we want to
And-
make sure you're happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean,
so-
any ideas? I mean, the wine is always an experience. It always, should be a journey, and so wherever you want to go, we can find the wine. Well, I say that hopefully. There are many, acknowledging where we are. I mean, we are not the number one wine consumer on the planet. So, would I love to showcase? I've Mexican wine, and I've had wine from Japan, which it just blows my mind. China, probably in the next 10 years, China will surpass us as the largest wine consuming region in the world. So there's all sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, I can't get any Chinese wine or Japanese wine, or Mexican wine. Well, that's not true. I can get a handful of bottles, but they're crazy expensive. But no, the wine world is a very large place.
yeah, there's one last question and then we'll have to close it, but this is a really interesting one and one I love. I was recently in Paris and the rosé was great there. I am not able to find that taste here. What do you suggest?
Oh, no, definitely. No, definitely. Let's come into the store. We'll talk rosé. I love rosé.
Yeah.
Rosé, now I always like to temper it, and this is a buzzkill. You'll never find the rosé like the rosé you had in Paris could be, and I say this as as somebody who does this myself. The rosé that you had in Paris could be awful. I mean, it wouldn't even need to be that great. You're in Paris and having rosé, which is what you're supposed to do in Paris. So all of those things play into the overall experience. But in theory, we should be able to find some rosés that are at least made from the same grapes or come from the same region. But no, rosé, I'm an unabashed advocate for rosé. I think rosé is something that you just have to have that experience where and again, whenever I'm in Paris myself or I have friends going to Paris, I'm like, go to a cafe, order some mussels if you like mussels, and a bottle of rosé, and just devour a baguette with some steamed mussels, and you'll just be the happiest person ever. But no, French rosé. Paris gets a lot of their rosé from the Loire Valley, so it's possible that would be where it is. I mean, there's also, I mean, a lot of Parisian cafes are sourcing wine from the south, from Provence, from the Languedoc-Roussillon. But no, I don't mean to pop the bubble, but yeah, probably if you're like normal humans, having rosé in Paris was an amazing thing because you were having rosé in Paris, and that is quite the experience, and one that everybody should have.
Okay. Well, on that note, as we all decide next month that we're going to meet in Paris, it would be lovely. We're going to have to close it out for this evening. So thanks everybody for joining us. It was, I thought, a really great excursion to a new country, some new varietals and some new wines. I always look forward to that. And we'll see you guys next month and hopefully in one of the many things in between.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
wonderful day.
Okay.
Be well.
Thanks, Steve. Good night, everyone.
Good night.